Hello viewers, here are two 12-inch high-velocity fans. I would consider these to be the best high-velocity fans currently on the market. The one on the left is an Air King model 9212, and the one on the right is a TPI model F-12-TE. These are both relatively expensive fans. The Air King retails for about $70 and the TPI retails for about $90. However, I think both are very much worth the price. These are both extremely well made fans, and I suspect that they will last a very long time. And I do think that they are close to, if not on par with, the performance and quality of the fans of years ago, especially the TPI fan. However, they are fairly different from each other despite both being very good quality. The TPI has a, let's see how much power this draws. I believe it is 1.23 amps, and Air King is only rated at 0.75 amps, so substantially less. They both have capacitor motors, permanent split capacitor PSC motors. They're both 3 speeds. The TPI has sleeve bearings, but they have oil ports, which is pretty rare for stuff made today. I have not seen fans like this made with oil ports in probably 20 years. There's one on the front as well. The Air King has ball bearings, no grease ports. Of course, the advantage to ball bearings is that they can be replaced when they wear out. If a sleeve bearing fan wears out, there's not much you can do about it. So the stands, completely different shape and style. This one has two bars and then these 4 feet. These are very soft and malleable, and this fan is extremely stable. It's not going to tip forward or backwards at all. There's no play either way. The Air King has a more traditional style stand, and we have these 4 relatively small feet, although they are malleable and soft, and it is slightly heavy towards the front. It doesn't take much to get it to move that way. It doesn't really want to push back, but it could go forward, whereas this one, not at all. No, it's not going either direction. They're about the same weight. Actually, the TPI may be slightly heavier, which is impressive because the Air King has a steel blade, whereas the TPI, I believe, has an aluminium blade. So I would have expected the Air King to be substantially heavier. That just means the TPI has all that much more of a beefier motor. Now the motor in the Air King is a little bit deceiving because the motor does not fill that entire housing. That's just a plastic housing that covers the motor. You can see the motor in there. It's certainly a decent size. It is enclosed, so then it's dust proof and everything. The motor on the TPI does not have a plastic housing around it, so this is exactly as you see it. It is also enclosed. The blade pitch is pretty decent on the TPI. It's really quite extreme on the Air King. The guard on the TPI is made of slightly thicker gauge wire. However, the handle on the Air King is certainly much nicer. And the Air King handle, another note about the handle, this doesn't really affect the performance of the fan, but it is an important element. When you pick up the Air King, it doesn't go out of balance. Whereas when you pick up the TPI, it immediately tips forwards. And it's just adds a little bit of a nicer user experience to be able to pick it up like this and have it not go out of balance as you're holding it. Not a big deal, but it's something to note. As far as the serviceability goes, TPI is much more serviceable. These clips undo the guard, and then you're just left with two screws, one on either side, to remove the guard. These screws do have nuts in the back, so you don't have to worry about them stripping out. They're not going into the guard itself. And the TPI also has oil ports, so it's easy to oil it up and clean it and keep using it. The Air King, it's not very easy to take apart at all. These screws, they don't go into to nuts on the back. So once these screws strip out, you're going to have a problem. And the way this attaches to the guard or the stand rather, is horrific. As soon as you unscrew these screws, which are essential to get the guard off, it detaches from the stand. And especially putting it back together is an absolute pain in the rear. This one you can see here is not designed like that. The front guard is completely separate from the back of the fan, and the stand will stay on the rear guard. The motor is going to stay in place, the blade will stay in place. You take the guard off and nothing else comes apart. This, when you take the guard off, the whole thing falls apart. And it's really a pain, and it's annoying, and it's a terrible design. So I have to say, shame on Air King for making it that way. This is not easily serviced. This one is extremely easily serviced. So the cords are both very long. I believe they're both 10-foot cords. One is wrapped around the tripod here. I'm going to bring these back to behind the camera, and you're just going to have to take my word for the fact that they're the same length. I'm going to check that now. Oh, they're not the same length. The TPI cord is about, let's see here. It's about that much longer, which is substantial. It's about 2 feet. Let's see here. Judging by the size of this rum, TPI cord is about 10 feet. The Air King is about 8 feet. Both are nice long cords. Certainly should be adequate for most all use cases. The wire itself on the Air King is nicer. It's a lot thicker. You can tell it's insulated better. The wire on the TPI fan is a little bit stiffer. See, this just flexes around. It's a really nice cord on the Air King. This one is okay, but it's a little bit stiff. You can see it's kind of holding its shape from where it was wrapped around. This one, it does as well a little bit, but not as much. The plugs, no fuse on this one, irreplaceable fuse on this one. So once this fuse goes out, you got to be handy enough to replace the plug. This one, it's not really anything to be concerned about. There is no fuse. I have no problem with fuse plugs as long as they're replaceable. So like this one bothers me because it's not replaceable. I'd rather just not have it if it's going to be non-replaceable. Although I will say that I have not come across a single fan that has failed because of the fuse. Let's take a look at the controls. The control on the Air King, in my opinion, is much better. It's easier to use. It turns nicer. It's very clearly labeled with numbers. It's very reachable. The one on the TPI is very hard to reach. Actually, it turns just as nicely. But from the front, especially on the bigger models, you have to reach really behind it, whereas right here you can just reach and it's right there. So the Air King is better for the speed control, for sure. Now let's just take a brief look at the overall build quality of the two fans. The Air King, I would say, has a more classic look to it, more refined in some ways. It doesn't look particularly rigid and commercial. It's made well. It's pretty solid. The guard it's not unbendable, but it's certainly sturdy enough. It's not going to break. My only concern with the Air King's design is this plastic housing. If this was to tip over or something fell on it and hit the fan, I suspect that would break very easily. and I'm not sure what exactly is mounted to that. I know the switch is mounted to it probably. I don't think the motor's mounted to it, but if that broke, you know, that's kind of crummy. It adjusts very easily, I will give it that much. As much as I don't like the way the stand is, it adjusts very, very easily. This one, I have to say, this provides a very nice user experience. It carries easily, it adjusts easily, the switch is nice. The TPI is a lot more rigid built. The design reminds me very much of the old patent high velocity fans, all the way down to the way the motor mounts on the rear guard. The blade does not go all the way, is not all the way forwards in the shaft, so that leads me to believe that this motor is more of not a universal motor, but it's universal in the sense that they use it on a lot of different products. It's not specific to this fan, so that could be an indicator that it's a very good quality motor and it's very reliable and dependable. The blades are very industrial, rigid shape and styling. The guard is it's unbendable, really. I mean, it's extremely solid. The stand, it's a little bit difficult to adjust. I mean, it's so stiff, I really can't do it without holding the stand in place. So it leaves something to be desired there. That may be fixed by loosening that nut. I'm not sure. I haven't really tried to fix it. But this one is definitely more industrial looking. Of course, we have the industrial logo on the front of it. And this one, I believe on the website it notates that it's a commercial environments fan, but it doesn't notate on it itself anywhere that it's supposed to be for commercial use. So, with all that being said, let's go ahead and plug these fans in, and we will show them running. Whoops, I'll wreck the place here. Okay, they're both plugged up now. So I'm going to start the TPI off on low. Try to keep the camera out of the windscreen as much as possible. If it's still in the windscreen. I really enjoy the sound of this TPI fan. It reminds me very much of the sound of high velocity fans from years ago. It's a nice, pleasant, constant chopping kind of a sound. It's very strong. It's moving a lot of air. I wouldn't say it's quiet. I can certainly have this on and not be bothered by it, but I'm going to be turning up the volume on the computer, and I'd probably turn it off if I went to use the phone. It's certainly noticeable. You're not going to forget that this is on. Let's go up to medium. This fan is extremely fast. This to me kind of seems like high on most good quality fans. It's extremely powerful. You can see all these things blowing around on the ceiling from it. Alright, let's go to high. Very, very strong airflow. And while it's certainly noisy and you're going to have to speak louder to hear over this thing, for the amount of air it puts out, I don't think the noise is unreasonable. Okay, we'll cut this off. I would consider that spin down time very reasonable for a sleeve bearing fan. I want to notate as well that this fan runs extremely smooth. The blade is very, very well balanced. There is no shaking, there's no vibration, there's no noises from the motor. All you hear is the airflow, and it runs fantastic. So now let's take a look at the Air King fan. Start off on low as well. There is a little bit of motor noise to this one. You can certainly hear it as it starts up, and you can hear a little bit of a motor hum as it's running normally. It's not loud or invasive, but it's certainly there. One of the things I like about the Air King is that the low speed is slow. The TPI fan is kind of faster, and then even more fast. This actually has a nice slow low, which is very quiet, yet still moving a decent amount of air. And this is not disrupting watching television or talking on the phone or anything. This is a really nice, quiet, slow low, and it's not moving anywhere near as much air as the TPI did on low, but it's still moving enough air to feel air circulating throughout the room and not be disturbed by the noise. So now we'll go up to medium. Okay, we're going to go back to low, and I'm going to answer the phone, and then we'll try again. Alright, let's try medium again. That was a good increase in speed. The Air King definitely has a much better variation in power levels compared to the TPI fan. Now, in a commercial environment, that may not be that important. However, in my use case, and probably most other residential use cases, that's very important. Because especially on the bigger models, like the TPI 18-inch model, it's too fast to use in a small room like this. I think this is still quieter than the low speed on the TPI fan. Excuse me. These two fans move air a little bit differently. I've noticed that the TPI fan is more of like a pretty narrow stream right in front of the fan, whereas with this Air King fan, I've noticed it kind of drafts out the side of the fan more and comes more in like a gusty kind of a thing rather than a constant concentrated stream. This is probably better for circulating the air in a larger environment, because I can stand several feet away from the fan, or away from the center of the fan, and I'm still feeling breeze. Whereas with the TPI fan, you have a fairly narrow, concentrated beam of air to work with. Now, with that being said, this fan does not blow as hard. At least even on medium, it's still not blowing as forcefully as the TPI fan does. Now, there are CFM specifications listed on the internet for both of these fans, and I should have looked them up before I did the video because I don't know offhand what they are. In fact, I'm going to pause the video for a moment and retrieve those specifications. The results are in, and they are very interesting. The TPI fan is claimed to move 1,400 CFM, and the Air King fan is claimed to move 1,360 CFM, so we're talking a 40 CFM difference. Now, I don't necessarily believe those ratings because they come from the manufacturer, so they're probably very biased, and I think the CFM readings are haywire because you use a different method and you get a completely different number. But supposedly the fans move with negligible margin of error the same amount of air. And feeling the output of the fan right here, it does feel as strong as the TPI did, but when I stand back here, even just 4 feet away, the breeze diminishes substantially. So, and I suspect that may have something to do with this gigantic badge on here. I don't know. But it certainly moves a lot of air. By no means is this a weak fan. Even if I stand all the way across the room, I'm still feeling a decent amount of air. I'm going to angle this upwards here a little bit. Same, excuse me, angle that I had the TPI fan at. And, no, that was a little bit higher maybe. Go like that. And let's see here. The stuff is still moving, but it's not moving as much. And I think that's because the airstream is just not as concentrated on the Air King fan. Okay, let's go to high. On high you have that motor hum. It's certainly audible. It kind of feels like more air right up against the guard than the TPI fan. But again, as I move backwards, the airflow does kind of diminish relatively quickly compared to the TPI. However, I will say on high speed now, there's been a pretty big jump up in airflow. You can see the stuff on the ceiling is whipping around pretty good now. So this is by no means a weak fan. It's very powerful. Now we'll turn it off, and the spin down is very long because it's ball bearings. Now there is another thing I want to mention about the Air King, and that is the fact that the blade is not very well balanced. And this is really unfortunate because it just doesn't run smooth. And especially the bigger models, they shake, and they don't necessarily audibly vibrate, but you can, like the 14-inch one that I have, it vibrates so bad you can feel the vibration across the room on the floor. It's outrageous. And so that's gonna, it is ball bearings, and they hold up to a lot of abuse, but that's gonna wear it out faster, shaking like that. Not to mention it's outrageous to spend $70 on a fan and the blade's not even balanced. Now I can see it just went back to the left a little bit. That's how out of balance it is. This model, the 12, isn't too bad. But the 14-inch model I have and the other bigger ones, those are awful. Outrageous. So let's turn them on together now. There's not really enough air on this desk. They're going to be fighting against each other and probably not work as well as they should be. But we'll just do this for comparison purposes. I don't know if the video picked it up, but the lights did flick a bit when I turned the TPI on. So the TPI definitely draws more power. I'm trying to back the camera up to keep it out of the wind stream as much as possible. So the TPI is definitely much stronger, and it can predominantly be heard. I don't know if the blade design of the TPI is necessarily louder, or it's just louder because it's running so much faster than the Air King. I'm almost out of charge on the camera. So let's go to medium. And I do feel, standing back here, much more air from the TPI, but again the TPI is a very concentrated stream, whereas the Air King, it's a very wide, gusty kind of breeze that I get from it. Right up together, the TPI is still stronger. Let's go to high. TPI is definitely still stronger from back here. Although, as far as noise goes, I don't necessarily hear the TPI predominantly anymore. I can hear both of them. The Air King has more of a low frequency, more ignorable sound to it, though, I will say that much. Okay, so the Air King feels much stronger right up close to it. But back here, the TPI feels stronger. So the TPI blows further, but the Air King seems to have a higher velocity right up against it. And of course the Air King spin down time again is going to be much better because it's ball bearing and the blade is also much heavier being steel. So the TPI fan, it can be felt from much farther away, although right up close the Air King fan seems to be stronger, but the air doesn't seem to carry as far. I don't know if that's a function of the blade design, that outrageously large logo on the Air King one, or a function of both of those things. But there's different use cases for each one.